Hello, I'm Judith Barr. I'm a depth psychotherapist and author of the book Power Abused, Power Healed. And I have a knack and a passion to help people connect the dots between our individual issues, wounds, and healing, and the issues, wounds, and healing of our world. I've been writing some articles about just that, making those dots be connected, particularly in relationship to the election process and the election itself. And today I'm going to share one of those articles in the hopes that you will be intrigued, inspired, that it will be thought-provoking for you, and that will stir you on a feeling level to do some deep exploration for yourself about your participation in the election process. Imagine if everybody who watches this video does the same. So let's dive in. The conventions are over. There's a bit of distance from them, and as long as you aren't someplace where one of those candidates is stomping, hopefully you can take a moment to breathe and a moment to be a little bit more objective. One of the scary and dangerous things about the election campaigns is the phenomenon of the mob mentality. People get caught up on a wave of energy and feeling exactly the wave the campaigner intends, and carried away to exactly the place the campaigner intends. And this is the scary and dangerous thing. In the midst of the mob dynamic, people stop thinking for themselves. And they allow the campaigners to think for them. And they allow the campaigners to get them, the people, to think whatever the campaigners want them to think. Carried away on that wave, people disconnect from their own moral compass, their true feelings, and their deep instincts. And they can no longer sense when a red flag is raised or an alarm bell goes off. They are so carried away, they can't even tell when there's danger afoot, let alone respond to it. This is one of the things that was of such deep concern during the conventions. The speakers were whipping up the crowd one by one, building to a crescendo that they hoped would carry the people unwittingly right into their camp. If the convention was for the party you're not part of, it might have been very scary for you to watch that, even if you couldn't name what was going on. If the convention was for the party you are part of, it might have been very exciting for you to watch that, whether you could name it or not, and whether or not you could discern that the same thing was going on at each convention. Maybe it just felt less scary to you with the party that believes what you believe. But it's not less scary, really. For in either case, the people in the crowd have suspended their own good sense, their own good thinking, their own awarenesses, their own instinct, and consciously or not have said yes to being carried away. Do you like the roller coaster? If so, it's like you've said, yes, I'll go on this roller coaster ride. Never mind the consequences. Never mind the danger. But what happens when you find out the consequences of your having suspended your own thinking? Then what happens? Then do you realize that by saying yes to being part of the mob dynamic, you've contributed to the mob? You've fed the mob energy. You've added to the mob frenzy. You've been part of actions taken and part of actions in process that you never intended to have happen, and that you will not now be able to stop. You've been part of things that you now regret, or if not now, you will regret at some point in the future. This can happen on a micro level, like in a family, or on a macro level, like in society. This can happen to you too, even if you believe it can't. Many of us believe we're immune to this, but honestly, who amongst us is perfectly conscious? Let's look at an example of the micro level. And before I give you the example, I just want to acknowledge that my friend who I'm telling the example about has given me permission to tell the essence of her story because she too wants to help us not join the mob mentality. So here's the story. Many years ago, a very new friend of mine married someone she'd known since childhood. They had been friends since childhood. Their families had been friends for years and years and years. I was invited to the wedding and I attended. I was also very uncomfortable. Something felt slightly off to me. I couldn't tell what, but something felt off about this match made in heaven. Some years later, my friend and I were taking a walk, and she told me that they were going to get divorced. We talked about how they'd come to that decision and how she felt about what was happening. And as we were talking, I told her that I'd been very concerned, even at the very beginning, when I heard about their marriage. When I told her, she said, "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you say something?" And I told her that I felt our friendship was so new, it wasn't my place to say anything. What she said to me was, with tears in her eyes, she wished I had said something. She said that the families were so excited about the joining of these two families and these two people that she got carried away on the wave of excitement and couldn't hold her own ground. She suspended her own thinking, her real feelings, her instinct, and let the mob mentality, so to speak, carry her someplace that was not true for her and was not good for her to go. This kind of thing happens all the time on a micro level. In families, among siblings, among friends, in classrooms, at workplaces, and so forth. Often with painful, sometimes even truly destructive consequences. Think, for example, of any one of those places I've just named with the mob bullying one of the people. Now let's look at an example of the macro level. In the classic book, The Oxbow Incident, 3 innocent men are hanged by a would-be posse. Although one amongst them tries to save the men, being part of the mob carries the others away from truth and justice. It's only after the hangings have taken place that the mob discovers their supposed justification for suspecting and killing the 3 men had never occurred at all. A truly serious, destructive consequence of getting caught up and carried away by the mob mentality. Or let's look at how the charisma of Adolf Hitler, which could have been used for great good, was misused and abused to carry people on a wave to their worst instincts and their worst intentions, sometimes without their even realizing it. And how the mob mentality turned into a riot mentality that caused the deaths of millions of innocent people, the torture of millions more, and destruction beyond comprehension. Although we need to comprehend the kind of destruction that results from being carried on the wave of the mob mentality. One final macro example. As I wrote this article, it was revealed that there had been riots in 2 Middle Eastern cities at the embassies of the United States. As understood up until now, someone in the US put an amateur movie clip and trailer on the internet, making fun of the Prophet Muhammad. The effect, people in the Middle East who believed in Muhammad saw the movie and began to protest. The protest may or may not have been influenced and manipulated by others, but the protest turned into a mob and then a riot. At least 4 United States Embassy people were reported killed, and I don't know how many others were killed or injured. This shows that the riot mentality can take place in person, via television or radio, and via the internet as well. As you prepare to vote in the election on November 6th, I urge you to search your mind, your heart, and your soul. I urge you to explore within yourself, have I been caught up on a wave of mob mentality? Have I been vulnerable in some way beneath my awareness to allowing myself to be carried onto such a wave? Have I suspended my own thinking, my own true feelings, my own instincts? And if so, how did that happen? If so, how do I get myself off that wave and find a grounded place from which to re-explore? How do I discover what it was within me that caused me to let go of myself and join the wave? And what do I need to heal inside myself in order to prevent that in the future? As you and we move toward the election, and a very important election it is, whatever information you gather in the outer world, commit to find the truth. But most important of all, heal within yourself the place where you could be caught up on a wave of mob mentality, completely disconnected from truth, completely disconnected from who you really are. Thank you for being with me today and for opening your mind and heart to perhaps a very new perspective for you. If you want to read some of my other articles on the election, you can find them on my blog, PolyPsych. It's on the nav bar of my website, PowerAbusedPowerHealed.com. And if you feel inspired by this video, please pass it on to others so they can be inspired too and do their own work in preparation for the election. Thank you very much. Until next time.